We have now launched the online Shockwave course. When I set the company up, which is over 12 years ago now, which is hard to believe, I was always about educating the clinicians as well, not just in terms of the technology. So when Dom Smith came to me with this idea of doing the Shockwave course, I was all for it. And Dom and Katie have done a fantastic job of putting it together. It's really impressive, really comprehensive. It is technology agnostic, so whatever system you're using will be able to help you with this. So it's a brilliant piece of work. The guys have done really well. So check it out and go to the link below and let us know what you think.
Hello, welcome. Today I am joined by Luke Millward, who is a physiotherapist and MSK sonographer. Luke, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing very well. The last time we were physically together, albeit we're not now, we were in the sunny climate of Madrid. So
Yeah,
that was at the incredible isokinetic conference. So
yeah,
yeah,
amazing.
it was a good trip, that wasn't it?
Really nice. Nice to get a bit of sun. That feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You don't often get sun literally in a conference, but because it was outdoor and it was in that amazing Atletico Madrid
Beautiful.
stadium,
Yeah.
you get your vitamin D for that. It's like, yeah, this is actually, I can understand it.
Yeah, sure do. Yeah, it's a great weekend.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Like just from that event, then, what did you take away from the from that isokinetic event?
So a lot of it is networking with these big things, isn't it? Getting to see people, getting to know new people, catching up with like people like yourself who you don't see on a regular basis. So that kind of stuff the conferences are great for. Um, from my point of view, it was one of these what we're here to talk about today is like the growing world of musculoskeletal sonography and where it fits into patient pathways. And that conference obviously is all about football, so a lot of it's injuries that you don't always see in a normal MSK clinic, like your rec fem tears and things like this, which they come in but not that regularly, and how that equates to like higher end stuff, like how long to return to play for a rec fem tear or an aponeurotic tear of the gastroc or something like that. So that was really nice to be in an environment where you're getting experts in those fields, just get more information really.
Yeah, no, there was an incredible schedule that they'd put together. It was quite a piece of
Intense.
handiwork. I know they're very experienced at doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree on the networking piece. I love going to those events because for one, you've got loads of people that are trying to learn and get together on things. And I think they did a particularly good job on the networking piece.
Yeah.
And like IBSA are obviously great, like with getting a group of us together where we could go out for drinks and stuff in the evening, because a
Yeah.
load of good stuff comes from that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and it helps confirm if you feel like you're going on the right path clinically. Sometimes if you don't go on those events, and the actual like talks are good, but like you say, it's the chats with people, and you go, yeah, that's right, that's how I see myself. My clinic is as well, and how are you dealing with things, or how I deal with things, or well, that's interesting. You're doing something slightly different, and it's those things I think are more important. Those little free chats rather than the formal teaching side of things, I think really make the difference.
And how do you find that in terms of the world of physio in your instance or sports medicine, in terms of people being open to share what they're doing?
It's an interesting area because I've worked at Complete Physio, for instance, for 10 years, and I've worked with Chris Myers and Dave Baker, for instance, and they're like pioneering physios, excellent experts. And our opinion is if someone, we've got a very open team, we all share information, and no one is made to feel silly if you say, this is the scan I've just done, it doesn't compute, something's not right here. And it's very open sort of, environment. Like if people want to come in and sit in on a clinic of mine and just see what happens, I'm always open for it. But you don't always find that in the world of healthcare, or I haven't. I found that there's a lot of people who feel like they not necessarily want to share their knowledge, whether that's for fear or for maybe they another ulterior motive. But I think for physio to progress or sports medicine to progress, it's really about the communication and learning off of each other. So if you're sitting in your room on your own and you never go on conferences or never knock on the door next door and say, that this is weird, what do you think? Even if you think this is a stupid question and I know I'm going to get the right answer, but just for confirmation, it's having that, and I'm really lucky because I can call Chris Myers and say, I just had this scanning. What do you think's wrong here? And he'll give me an answer without having that worry about looking silly. So I think really progressing in your career is all about contacts. It's all about knowing people and learning off of each other, like standing on the shoulders of those giants and pushing a little bit better, because you get nowhere from being a lobster in a pot and pulling each other down.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, because you're in Complete Physio, so you've got Chris on board. Like, in terms of working with other organisations, like, do you feel like they could be more open with those things? Because I certainly experience it. You can see people don't want to share, maybe maybe it's a fear thing of not exposing themselves, but also from a competitive side of things. Do you think that is there?
I think there is a lot of that. With physio, it's such a broad career, which is one of the amazing reasons why being a physio is such a great career, because you can pin yourself off into an area like I have now, into like diagnostic imaging and injections, which is my love, or you can pin yourself completely off into the other direction and you can become real strength and conditioning, rehab, or you could now, like men's health, for instance, is a real big thing now coming up. We've had women's health for a long time, but now sort of men's health is coming up. And there's a growing need for things like, men's health stuff like erectile dysfunction treatments and shockwave, for instance. And being able to like learn off of each other and go to someone else's clinic who might be a competitor or like on the other side of London and say, can I come in and sit in on you, see how you do it? People don't want to do that because they think there's a knowledge thing that they don't want to share. They don't want to lose their little competitive edge. So there's that monetary side of things, as well as maybe not wanting to spread the knowledge. But I mean, that's not how I see it. I see it that you're building contacts, you're learning, and the way to really understand a subject is to be able to talk to someone who may be new to it, or explain something challenging to a child, for instance. If you can do that, then you know your subject. And the only way to really test yourself clinically is to be able to impart your knowledge, not to people that to people that you don't know it, but also to people that you think have got much better knowledge than you. So you can then sort of gauge where you are and where your gaps are. And patients love it. If you've got someone in, I'll often have people coming in to watch clinic, or I'm mentoring someone through their ultrasound journey, and you say, oh, I've got John in today. He's a really experienced physio. He's 20 years, but he's never done scanning. Do you mind if he sits in the room? They feel like, oh, yeah. And then you're chatting to the patient, but then you're also chatting to them. The patient likes it because it looks like you really know what you're talking about because you're with another clinician. And sometimes that clinician is an expert in the patient's problem. Like, you get someone who knows loads of hips. And I say, well, actually, John does loads of hips. What do you think? And then they get their information. The patient gets that information from two clinicians at once. So there's nothing to lose and all to gain. There's millions of people in the world and most people need treatment. So you shouldn't worry about not having enough to go around.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And like, I think the collaboration over competition is such a fundamental mindset. And it's definitely the vast majority, I would say, don't have that mindset and you can see that they're, and I can understand it. I run a business and it's you want to do that. But I think the opportunity is so huge. And like you said, there's so many different ways that you can specialize and be an expert in your niche. And even then, like there's plenty of room for you raising awareness of everything.
Yeah. And you never know where the next collaborative thing will come in. Like suddenly you've got an opportunity that you never thought, like going off to the ice kinetic course for a weekend, just because you've pushed yourself out there and you've got to know people and you've made new friends. What could be better than that?
Yeah, no, I agree. So what made you get into physio?
So I came out of school in the early 90s with no qualifications at all. I was diagnosed with dyslexia in my second year of university, but going through school in the 80s and the 90s, that wasn't a thing. So, you come out of school with no qualifications, got into sport, had a couple of boxing matches, got into some early stage MMA, had a couple of cage fights back in the day. Saw a couple of injuries and thought, yeah, that'd be pretty cool being a physio. That'd be really interesting. I'm not going to have to sit down and do maths at a desk. I'm going to be up on my feet and I'm going to be moving and thinking at the same time. So went back, did my GCSEs in my mid-20s, got my A-levels, worked at a disabled school for physically disabled children, got loads of experience, and then finally got into university. And that started my physio journey. Always known I wanted to be in MSK. Never wanted to be in a sports world. I never wanted to be a physio for a big sports team because I like normal life. I like the fact that you'll see a sportsman, then you'll see an old lady, and I like the interaction between different people from different walks of life and getting to know people. So that was really important for me to sort of have a wide variety of patients, especially in my early years. Then I qualified down in Plymouth University and came straight to London. Did my junior rotations at Barts in London, which was straight into the frying pan of the Royal London in Whitechapel, which was an amazing experience. And then I was there for a couple of years. And then went up to North London and North Middlesex and did my senior rotations. At the same time, I started exploring a bit of private physio in the evenings, as lots of physios do in their band 6 years. And then just felt like I wanted to go into the private world. So went out to the private world, and then about 13 years ago, met Chris and Dave. I met Dave Baker first on an evening talk, and we got chatting. And then I came on board with them, probably about 11 or 12 years ago, and never looked back. I was quite a general MSK physio for years, and I think that's really important. It's important to go through the hospital environment, understand, see some medicine, see some other bits and pieces, and get a real good, strong feel for healthcare first. And then when I came over to Complete Physio, I remember sitting in with Dave Baker, and we had at the time a little Sonosite M Turbo, little tiny ultrasound machine, and blew me away. And just his knowledge still blows me away. But he said to me at the time, if you want a solid career with good long-term prospects, then you got to pick up a probe. You got to be able to, you got to maybe start thinking about injecting. And so I started, pushing myself towards that. Got on the University of East London postgrad course with legend Pete Rastaghini in 2015, 16, something like that. And just fell in love with it. Now it's a passion, and I love it. Constantly learning. The more I do it, the less I realise I know, which is exactly where I want to be.
Yeah, that's a good soundbite, that one. So a couple of questions. I'll go back to the one I was going to ask before. But so when Dave said to you in terms of you need to pick up a probe, like what do you think he meant by that then? When he said you can have a proper career?
Well, not I said a proper career, but a long, a full and interesting career. Dave is very ultrasound. He loves ultrasound as much as I do. And just what I think, when you're a physio, you do all your tests, and you do a battery of tests for the shoulder, for instance, and you come out and you think, right, I know what this is. It's whatever. I think you've got a bursitis in your shoulder or something like that, and you go down and you treat that route until it doesn't work, and then you change your angle, and then you keep. But it's very much sort of like you're in the dark, really. We know that a lot of clinical assessments aren't that sensitive, so you're really going on what you feel and clinical experience, which is worth absolutely loads. And clinical experience definitely is as important as evidence bases. You know, it is an evidence base. It's your own evidence base, isn't it? But I've always felt like I'm missing things, that, you know, the patient's not responding the way I thought they would do, even though they were positive in this test and this test and that, or whatever. But when you pick up a probe, suddenly the 3 or 4 diagnoses that you would routinely use for a shoulder, for instance, suddenly explodes, and you've got all sorts of stuff going on. And having that ability to really sort of pinpoint what you know is great for yourself, but it's great for the patient. You know, you can then say, oh, actually, I think you should go and see a consultant for this. I think, you know, we're going to be wasting our time hitting this up straight away. Or actually, you know what, you're doing really well. You'll get an old lady come in with shoulder pain. You scan her, she's got a complete supraspinatus tear, and you think, right, that's what's going on. You look on the other side, complete supraspinatus tear, arm above her head, throwing a dog from the ball, and you're like, what do you do with that? So I think where physio is placed, and where Dave was, I think, going with it, was that physio is perfectly placed to have a probe in their hand, because you've got great clinical experience, you understand how people move, you can assess them clinically really well, and then you can have a look at the ultrasound, and then you can put that clinical pattern together, and you can come up with a much better diagnosis. And if you can't diagnose properly, you can't treat properly. So then the patient gets a better outcome, and you get better satisfaction. I mean, satisfaction is the thing that's going to keep you in your job role, isn't it? You know, for 20, 30 years, you know, going to work, not having the Monday morning blues, going in and feeling like you've actually achieved something. You know, and I've been scanning now for 8, 9 years, and you know, how many knees or shoulders must I have scanned? I still go, wow, it's so cool. Like, it's like you're diving, you put your goggles on, you look under the water, and there's a whole world there. So for me, I think I couldn't do my job without it. So Dave was right for me.
Yeah, and like, because you've done stuff in the NHS then, so from a sonography perspective,
Yeah.
because you have sonographers, you have, say, radiologists that are maybe looking purely at structures, and you just mentioned there about physios joining the dots from what I'm taking away from that. Like, where do you see the different roles fitting? And because it's a really dynamic area at the moment, of more physios are doing it, osteos, chiros, etc., in private clinics. How do you see the landscape of it?
So I was really fortunate. I went back into the NHS as an ESP role for a year to really like concentrate on guided injections after I did all my qualifications. And in that time, I met some really nice guys who had contacts in the radiology department in Newham. So I managed to get into Newham and do an MSK ultrasound list just once a week for a year there, and that was invaluable. But it's a very different environment to physio. So where a physio's are a clinician, and they're, you know, you're asking questions, you're trying to dig deep into where the pain driver's coming from, and you'll do your tests. Again, if we go back to the shoulder, you know, you'll do a test, and as soon as you lift your arm, you go, it's a frozen shoulder. You don't need to scan. I mean, you can tell within 3 seconds of seeing someone whether they got a frozen shoulder or not. But from an instance, from in a sonography, on a sonography list in anywhere, if you're not a clinician who's used to actually assessing people, you miss out on stuff. So what you'll find is you'll get people coming back from, I had a scan down the hospital and they said, I've got a bursitis of my shoulder, and they're fixated because they've had a scan. And then you go, right, let's have a look at how you move. And they go, well, yeah, you've probably got a bursitis because you've got a raising frozen shoulder, but no one's actually lifted the arm and put those two jigsaw pieces together to create the picture. So I love my time just, you know, spending all day imaging on a beautiful machine. But it was quite frustrating because you don't have much time. And from my physio hat, you always have to take your physio hat off because you could spend the whole 20 minutes just assessing them before you even get to a scan. So it's about having, it's a very different job role. You know, you're there for a clinical question. You'll get query, rotator cuff tear, and you have to answer that question. And I found that I was doing a lot of physio in that room as well and giving advice and stuff like that because I can't help myself.
So how long would you get for like that appointment as opposed to say what you get at Complete?
So we have for a new assessment space at Complete, we have 45 minutes. You know, some people you don't need that long, do you? Some people you need longer. But in Newham, we had 20-minute appointments. And in that time, you scan the patient, and then you have to, you know, all the back stuff, putting it on the PAC system, writing the report, done, next one. And it doesn't take many late patients before you open the door and there's 5 people fighting over who's coming in the door next. So there's a different sort of pressures on that. But you're seeing a very different caseload again, you know, and that's why it's really important. I think sonography in hospitals has got loads of, you know, just in MSK world, you can have a normal outpatient MSK list where you're seeing the arthritic knees, you know, the rheumatoid scans, etc. But then you can have one in A&E looking at acute injuries, and that would be a great way to spend your day, flipping between the chronic cases and the acute cases, because you get very different injuries.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you're passionate about your job. It's good.
Yeah.
No, it's really good. And that why do you think that particularly now, like we've seen, it's changed our business when we got involved with diagnostic ultrasound in terms of the demand for it. Why do you think it's such a growing thing within MSK?
I think it's because nowadays, well, the technology is available, right? So if the technology is available, people want to jump on it, which is amazing. You know, if you go back to the pioneers of physio sonographers, like your Pete Rastaginis, your Rob Lau from Smug, people like that, you know, they'd have to spend at least 35 grand to get a tiny little screen that looks like a snowstorm. There's no courses available. You'd have to read anatomical research and try and figure out what you're seeing. And it takes a special kind of person to do that. And there are not many of them about. So the fact now that there are great pioneers in the world, you know, like the guys at Smug, for instance, that make it accessible. You can go on a course, you can jump on a postgrad certificate, and the introductory sort of bar is much lower. You know, you can get a machine for a lot less, which has much better resolution, that you can see stuff. And so there's that. And I think because now, you know, evidence-based practice, people, you know, they want to have hard, fast information. I think that's obviously played a role in the you know, bringing in point of focus ultrasound.
Yeah, like it completes quite a unique, really great business, and it's like the guys have done an amazing job with where it is. Like, how have you seen their transformation over the time period? You've been with them for, we say, 12 years or so. How have you seen them change in that period? What were they like when you went in?
Very much like they are now. We're just a bit of a bigger team now. Very open, like I was saying earlier on, open for teamwork, open for, you know, discussion, and everybody will, you know, you can go to anybody at work and say, what would you do for this? You know, and the guys that have been there for a long time, very experienced, will go to anyone else. What do you think? What would you do for this? Because patients don't respond always the way you want them to, and sometimes it's just a cue that someone else uses that will get someone to, right, I know how to do that exercise now, and you're like, done. So yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's just good, isn't it? Fundamentally, I mean, Chris is, I do admire Chris because he's very authentic, isn't he? Like he is what he is, strong opinions, really clear in terms of the way that he wants things done and so on. So no, it's that's really good. Go on, we're going to say something there.
No, I wasn't going to say.
All right. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned. So you mentioned that you really struggled and you had to go back to do GCSEs and so on. So what changed? Like what made you able to be able to be in a position to go and do something that is really academic in terms of physio?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was um, the boxing and the MMA. The fact that I remember thinking to myself, yeah, it's not going to be, nothing's going to be worse than getting knocked out in front of 1,000 people. So let's give it a go. And you could just, you could get
Did that happen?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. First one out. Back in the old days when we didn't have weight categories. So it was I remember being 63 kilos and 21 and fighting an 80 kilo, 40-year-old bloke. I mean, there's only going to be one winner out of that, isn't there? But it's all part of the rich tapestry of, developing yourself. And I think that ability to start again, I think is really important for if you want to go down a new area in your career. Like sonography is a completely different beast. You've got to throw away everything you knew. Where you think your anatomy is not necessarily where it is when you put a probe on someone. So it's like losing the ego, and then starting completely from afresh. And having that sort of mentality, I think, is a good growth mentality.
For sure. No, definitely. And then, so going back and doing your GCSEs like that, I've been really interested that a lot of people that I've had these interviews with that have gone on to do really good things like you have had similar challenges early on. And they're perceived then to be you're thick, you're stupid. Whereas now you look at them like even James Moore is like he was considered that, and now look what James is doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you like? How it's quite difficult to define what intelligence is.
Well, as we know now, there's more than just passing your SATs. We now know there's like emotional intelligence, for instance. It's those other intelligences that not necessarily the standard. Like in like learning, you have a very small, thin box, don't you? You have to do your maths, you have to do your English, and I see it with my son, who's also dyslexic, and I see the challenges that he's got. And I can help him through those things because I've been there myself. But it's almost like knowing where you are and understanding how you learn. And my granddad used to say to me, "You don't learn anything from winning," which is a great mentality to have. It's the times when you fall over and you get up, and it's those times like you might lose a fight in the ring, or something goes wrong at work, like you don't just go, right, sod it, I'm never picking that probe up again because I missed that hamstring tear. Then you're like, actually, why did I miss that hamstring tear? And then you should be able to go right back to basics again and then relearn it, and make sure you don't do it again. So yeah, it's about like trying not to put a cap on yourself, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's so much you can learn from it. Like that, you obviously were competing at a good level to be in front of 1,000 people. And like I always watch fighters, and I love boxing. I watch MMA, and I just think, God, that is because I look at it and think, God, are you losing your dignity by getting knocked out in front of 1,000 people, or however many are watching? That is, you're putting yourself on the line. It's a very different sport. I know people compare tennis to fighting, but in tennis, it's unlikely you're going to be, unconscious.
Yeah, it's just testing yourself, isn't it? And I think in life you should be, whether it's in career or buying a house or whatever you're doing in life, there should be something there that you're pushing yourself, whether you've got a creative hobby or whether it's whatever. It's always a good idea to try and get yourself out of your comfort zone somewhere, to keep to developing, because if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know you, if you don't mind me mentioning your health issue that you had as well, like how that's significant and probably brings things
Yeah,
into reality very quickly.
yeah. I had testicular cancer in 2018. Um, Fortunately, I caught it early enough, and I remember going for the scan, and I don't do medical ultrasound, but I remember looking at my testicle on the screen, going, that doesn't look right. I'm sure there shouldn't be Doppler there. So I kind of managed to figure it out before I got the diagnosis from just looking at the scan. But I caught it early, which was great, and NHS are amazing. I'm up near Cambridge, so we've got Addenbrooke's up here, and I went, from seeing a consultant to having an operation to having chemo within 6 weeks, and for me, massively positive, because how many patients do you see coming into clinic who have had more significant healthcare issues like cancers, and you can say you can relate to them. And yeah, so for me, I caught it early, so I knew I wasn't going out anywhere. So I just took it as a massive positive, and it's all good.
Yeah, no, it's good to frame it that way. Like, what big an impact did that have on your work capacity in that period?
I mean, it's amazing how tiring chemotherapy is. I remember sitting there in this great big Parker-Knoll chair with a vein going into my arm, watching this poison going in it, and my arms getting colder and colder. And literally within a few days, I was absolutely zonked. And it's just from one hit of chemo. God knows how people do it when they have multiple hits of chemo. I can really understand why people say, no more, I can't do it. Unless you've been there. And I remember I went to live with my mother-in-law, because I had 2 little children at the time, 1 and 3. And so, because I was immunocompromised, my mother-in-law said, come and live with me. And so I lived with her for 2.5 weeks, until I was better. But she just packed me off to walk around the village, and just dead on my feet. I remember going back to a full list by 3 weeks, and I was in pieces for a long time. But yeah, came out of the wash in the end, and it's just all part of being you, isn't it? Character building stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously you don't want to go through it, but I'm sure you
No.
do learn significance, and those things, that's a big thing. They really do put other insignificant things in perspective, don't they? And so
Yeah.
it's how you frame it, and it's yeah. So yeah, no, I'm glad that it's all good, and you've been able to crack on and do what you're doing. And then, like you mentioned, just some of the new developments in terms of what the different opportunities within MSK and private healthcare. Like, where do you see the industry going from a physio perspective, from your perspective? Where do you see it going?
So we're in an incredibly fortunate position in the UK as physios. There's lots of places in the world, Canada, America, Australia, that you can't necessarily have the freedom to do what you want like we do here. And I'm hoping that we obviously can keep our freedom. I feel like I was hamstrung myself, really, because I can't go off to do what I do in America or Canada or move countries, because I wouldn't be able to do my injections and maybe my scans and stuff like that we can do here. So I think we're in an incredibly fortunate position. I think it's, from a private point of view, I think it's all about finding your unique selling point, and having, not just saying, oh, I'll treat anything. It's like seeing an orthopedic consultant says, oh yeah, I'll treat your shoulder and your knee. No one wants that now. You want to go and see a knee specialist. And physios should think themselves like that. You should say to yourself, right, I'm really into lower limb rehab, or I love tendons. Tendons are my thing, load-bearing tendons, or, I'm really into hands because I see lots of rock climbers, or, and then really sell yourself. Get on things like LinkedIn, put yourself out there, get yourself known, go and talk to like the consultants and other clinicians that about what you do, rather than just sitting in with a consultant in the corner of the room and just nodding your head. Go in there being proud of who you are, and this is what I do, and don't bother sending me a hip because I don't like hips. I want to see necks or whatever it is, and niche yourself down and become like passionate and expert on whatever that is. So there's lots of things that physios can go into, especially now with like independent prescribing rights. You can get into things like cervical neck stuff and migraines, or you could get into men's health, or you can really sort of find your niche. So that's going to be really important from a private. It's much more difficult in the NHS with the restrictions. I see a lot of frustration with patients, the classic, took 4 months to see a physio and I got a sheet of physio tools, exercises, and then I'm not going to see him for another 3 months. Well, the physio knows they're not going to make you better. The physio is not going to make you better with that. And it's about, look, don't lose your hands-on stuff as well. We're there, we want that human contact with people. And sometimes, even if you know that you can do some soft tissue work with someone, it's not going to last, but it's that connection with them. Look, I can make you feel better. I do something. Oh yeah, I can move my arm better. Then you've got the hook. They know that you know what you're talking about. Then when you tell them they have to do their exercises, they're more likely to do it because they've got more respect for you.
Yeah, I think like those non-clinical things that you just mentioned there, like what could you distill that into a couple of things that you think are important from that connection with the client?
So, there's even, I think there's a bit of research out there that says that if your physio smiles at you, you're going to get better quicker. So, it's the stuff that you were taught when you were young. Say hello to someone, look them in the eye, big smile, shake your hand, ask them how they're doing, have some chat about stuff whilst you treat them that isn't about physio, find out about them. What do they want? That kind of stuff, super important. So it's all of that stuff. I actually got a piece of research published last year looking at ultrasound guided injections and patient perspective. Did a qualitative research piece, and that came back that actually it wasn't so much the guided procedure, it was the interaction with the clinician that the patients valued the most. They wanted someone who they trusted, that they felt knew what they were talking about, and that's where the ultrasound machine gave them as a multimedia feedback tool to show them, basically to give them the trust in you as a clinician rather than what the diagnosis was, which kind of goes along with that. It's about getting someone on board, and physios don't have long with patients. You might see them for half an hour. You need to quickly get them on board, get them to trust you, otherwise you're not going to make them better.
Yeah, no, it's so important, isn't it? Just life skills. I think it's really important, just having that general connection with people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also I'm intrigued by the books you've got behind you. So what's the general theme on those ones? I'm trying to read some of the titles.
Well, they're all sorts of stuff. Loads of history. I love a bit of history, and I'm really into wildlife. Do a lot of wildlife photography is my sort of other passion. So I've got some bits and pieces up there. Yeah, that's kind of what's up there really. Got a couple of physio books that I haven't opened for years that I might stick on eBay. I've got my ultrasound book by my bed. I'll keep that one there.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah.
No, Luke, I really appreciate you sharing your insight into things and being so open with everything. And it's great to hear your passion for it. You've been working in the area for so long, and it's really good to have people like you that are pushing sonography and using ultrasound forward, as well as the whole physio industry. So, and it's great to hear just positivity about it as well, because I think there is huge opportunity, and it can be easy to be seen as being, it's hard, national insurance, all of these things. Yeah, there's challenges, but there's also massive opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure to come along and have a chat. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, welcome to get in touch with me via LinkedIn. More than happy to answer questions or have a chat with anyone.
Brilliant. Appreciate that, Luke. Thanks for sharing.
Pleasure. Take care.